Greetings fellow tank commanders. So I got a request from a subscriber, TV, to do a video comparing the Sherman Jumbo and the EZ8. I've chosen to use my premium EZ8, which is the same as the tech tree, with the exception that it's stuck with the 76mm and no option for the 105, and I'll be using my Sherman Jumbo with the 105. TV is interested in the competitive performance of each tank, so I picked two bottom tier games here, and so I'll walk through some of the key features of each tank during the battles, and then I'll finish off with a concise comparison. Now on to the first game with the Fury. This is a tier 6 American premium medium tank with regular matchmaking. The game I'm playing is a standard battle on Redshire with tier 8 as the top tier and 1 artillery on each team. For this game, my tank is equipped with a gun rammer, vertical stabilizer, and coated optics. I am using an American crew which has 18 crew skills and perks. And I am platooned up with Zarlar 64, who is in the tech tree variant of this tank. I was driving forward to work the ridge lines in the middle of the map, but getting charged by an autoloader light tank was not in my plan. This is pretty cool here. I go full reverse at the last second to stop that Lycan T-71 in his tracks, and it leaves him perfectly in place for Zarlar 64 to get a huge ram. That was an excellent teamwork reaction by Zarlar 64, and that saved me from dying early, or at the very least a huge portion of my hit points. I'm gonna have to be careful with my tactical decisions for the rest of the game. I've already lost a good amount of hit points in a game that I'm bottom tier. I was a little shaken up by that light tank charging me, and so I didn't move up as early as I probably should have, and I missed a few opportunities. This hilly terrain in the middle of the map is ideal for the EZ8 and Fury, and will perform that classic ridgeline peek-a-boom strategy very well. These tanks have great gun depression. This allows you to be flexible with where you choose to fight, which is very important for this tank because it is quite a soft target to shoot at. Keep that in mind because it's important not to overextend in the early game, so you're going to want to find a comfortable position off to the side of the main fighting. In this scenario, most of my teammates are fighting off to my right, and none of the enemies are paying attention to one little medium tank off to the side. This is giving me some safe opportunities to grab some free damage, and wear down the enemies as much as possible, so that when I am ready to get aggressive and go on the offensive, I'll have a large chance of success. I have the reload on this 76mm gun down to 2.78 seconds, and if you decide to run full gun performance with improved ventilation and cola, then you are just constantly firing. That allows you to be a very active medium tank player, and it's very forgiving when you miss. But it also gives you great opportunities to track enemies, and sometimes you'll even be able to switch back and forth, shooting the track once and then a weak spot on the second shot, if that enemy's got a lot of hit points and you need to keep them in place. That helps this tank be supportive and offensive, which when you're a medium tank you want to have as many options open as possible, because you're going to be that flexible tank that fills in whatever your team needs. And that's the overall goal you're going for when you're using the Fury or EZ8. I got a small charge in to finish off that ARL-44 and immediately start spotting out the second line of enemies. It would have been fun to show a little more of an epic charge with my platoon mate, but we're bottom tier and my teammates are performing very well behind us, and so we're just taking whatever we can get. The majority of the remaining enemies are confined to a hill off to my left. If the game had been a little closer, I would have gone forward and performed more of a spotting role, but my team had a nice lead and there was plenty of targets already spotted, so I just went for the easy damage opportunities. Now we get a little showcase of what these tier 6 Sherman tanks have to offer in terms of sniping with the 76mm. It's not great, but it gets the job done, and with that fast reload time, even if you miss, you got another shell coming right in. It's not going to be worth it to shoot at the really tough targets from the front. You don't have the accuracy to hit the weak spots or the penetration to go through them, especially at long range. If you find yourself in a situation where you're just bouncing your shots over and over and over again, remember that you've got the mobility to reposition, and it'll be worth it rather than giving the enemy an easy steel wall. Now the other thing to keep track of when you get in sniping situations with the 76mm is that your ammo can go down really fast. Sniping is definitely not the most efficient way to deal damage with this gun, so before you know it, you're going to have gone through most of your shells. I got one shot in on the side of that Tiger 2, but no surprise the other ones bounce, and managed to grab a few other easy snipes in there. I was playing very passively there, but the enemy managed to clean up the other side of the map, and so now I've got to move forward. I'm going to need a little bit of luck with these shots. That's a very small target. I almost got him. There's now only one enemy left over here, a Fatherland IS-3A, so I'm going in to join the fight. I decided to get really aggressive with this Fatherland IS-3A. Not the best tank to try to take on in a one-on-one fight, and it is definitely the wrong situation to get stuck on a dead tank. Well, that was real smooth. I got lit on fire as well. Now I'm just looking to get on out of there, and I managed to pen one of my snapshots. When I saw that my teammate was moving up to support me, I decided to roll back and try to get another shot in. Obviously at this stage I don't have to do that, but it seemed worth the risk because my team had such a good lead. That was some good teamwork with the T-29. Unfortunately, I missed a tank that was completely on the other side of the map, and I'm not able to get another shot in. Now let's check the post-game stats and see how I did. For this game, I earned 60,000 silver with a 25% multiplier, and earned 6,148 experience with the 2x daily bonus. In this game, I dealt 2,247 damage, assisted with 1,015 damage, and destroyed one enemy. This earned me a Mastery Badge Ace Tanker and a Confederate Medal. I placed at the top of my team, earning a base XP of 1,782. I managed to hit 31 of my 49 shots and penetrate 18 of those. Zarlar64 also had a decent game with 1007 base XP. Having this good game would not have been possible unless Zarlar64 saved me with that ram on that Lycan T71 right at the start of the game. In terms of crew and module damage, I injured the driver in the T25AT, damaged the fuel tank in the ARL44, and injured the driver in the Borsig. Now I'm going to be playing a game with the M4A3E2 Sherman Jumbo. This is a Tier 6 American Tech Tree medium tank, and I have it armed with a 105mm cannon. Now, although this tank may look like the M4A3E8, it takes a significant mobility loss in exchange for 38mm more of frontal hull armor and 88mm more of turret armor, which changes the game style quite a bit. The game I'm playing is a standard battle on steps with Tier 8 as the top tier and no artillery. For this game, I have my tank equipped with a gun rammer, vertical stabilizer, and improved ventilation. I am using an American crew which has 8 crew skills and perks, and I am platooned up with Mixie360 who is in a T3488. So first things first here, I am making a terrible mistake by cutting this area of the map. Pretty much in every tank you're going to want to head more to the outside of the map and not drive up on this ridge line. That way you don't get hit by the enemy snipers. And especially with a tank like the Sherman Jumbo, which is not a lightning fast tank. Just don't make a rookie mistake like I did there. Fortunately though, I don't take any damage for it. With the Sherman Jumbo, which shares quite a few heavy tank characteristics, it's usually best to play on the safe side when you're traveling to different locations on the map. It doesn't have the same mobility as the E8, which can get away with a few things like that. We've got 2 enemies moving around here, but I don't get any good shots in. The enemy is not showing a strong presence over here, and so it looks like both of them are trying to fall back to a more defensive position. So I'm just going to move forward with my teammates and support the assault. They're spearheading it down below, and so Mixie360 and I are going to take the high ground and come at them from a different angle. That's an overall decent summary of how you should think tactically with the Sherman Jumbo, and in particular when you're using the 105. You can be up on the front line but just off to the side, being a little more aggressive with your positioning than the Easy 8, but not by much. That T25/2 was AFK, and I managed to grab some great shots on him. 2 full pens with the HE shells through the side of the turret, and 1 that just went into the tracks. And this is a really good way to have a look at the potential of these HE shells. There's the risk of your shot getting absorbed into the track, and you can get a bit unlucky and your shot will just hit the wrong area of the turret. But when you find soft targets or the sides and rears of all but the strongest targets, you have potential to do an average of 410 damage with a full penetration. That kind of damage potential is very scary, and that's amazing damage potential for a tier 6 medium in one shot, even if it isn't that reliable. So the positioning we were talking about before in terms of survivability also works really well when you're thinking of using the 105. This also applies to when the Easy 8 uses the 105mm cannon. By positioning a little off to the side of the main engagements, you get side shots on the enemies, which is what is necessary to get good penetrations with the HE rounds. You do want to be decently close to the enemy to improve your reliability, but you're just going to have to make judgment calls at the time based off of the situation and the terrain. You want to try to avoid shooting the frontal armor of really any tank. That way you can get those nice big shots in. Obviously, sometimes you can't avoid it, but with those HE shells, you can be a tier 6 in a tier 8 match, and still be doing small amounts of damage every shot with those HE shells, which it's always nice to be able to do something even to tough enemies. But it can also be very tactically important, because enemies that are hull down or side scraping will suddenly leave their position because they don't want to take damage from you, and that can take an effective defensive line and put a nice hole in it. Now, the reason why I chose to show the Sherman Jumbo with the 105 instead of an Easy 8 game, because I think the increased armor of the Sherman Jumbo ties in nicely with the characteristics of the 105, because as you see, this gun is a little unwieldy, so you often have to stay out in the open for longer than you would like in order to get an effective shot, and what will allow you to do that without putting yourself at immense risk is having that nice armor. This isn't a heavy tank, so don't be expecting to just peek out around a corner in any way and bounce a shot. You will get ridiculous games where people just can't pen you, but for the most part, you have to work at making that armor effective. So, ridgeline fighting, very helpful. You got a pretty strong turret and a strong frontal plate, so if you have a little bit of an upwards angle, it can make it difficult for the enemy to penetrate. And you'll see here, I'm angled a little bit to the side and up on the hill, and I get a nice bounce from that IS-3. Against top tier tanks, you really have to be careful to make sure that angle is extreme, because they certainly do have some high pen guns. Now, as a quick side note for the Sherman Jumbo, one of the 3 top optional packages reduces your turret armor in exchange for some slightly better gun performance, but if you're choosing that option, you're giving up a huge portion of your survivability, and if you're looking towards that, you're probably better off choosing the Easy 8 then. So now we get a little bit of a sniping showcase here. 475 meters is not an ideal range for a 105 like this, but you see we're still able to get some shots in on this motherland and slow down his retreat, which is tactically very important, and it gives us a little bit of extra free damage. Now, what you won't get to see in this game is the heat rounds in action. You've got to be very picky when you use those rounds. They do have their uses, but it's not something that's going to be too often. You use them when you're fighting an enemy that has relatively weak armor, that's preferably flat or is thin but well angled, which makes it just enough that your HE shells don't get those nice full penetrations, and that's when the heat rounds come in and do a reliable 350 damage. Just be selective, and a lot of it is just going to come from familiarity with targets, and just making the right call at the right moment. But for tier 8s, the HE rounds work very well. I actually got a full penetration on the IS-3 by hitting the top of his engine deck, and then a few small splashing shots just to help bring him down. That's hard for a tier 6 to do against a heavily armored tier 8 heavy tank. So the Tiger 1 managed to get through my decently angled armor, and that took away all my fun hit points. So now as I head towards the remaining enemies, I've got to be a little more careful at what shots I take. You'll see that I'm going at decent speed, managing to keep for the most part above 30 kilometers an hour, but it does feel very sluggish compared to the Easy 8, and you do lose quite a bit of tactical flexibility. Okay, that snapshot did not pay off. Fortunately for me, the Motherland doesn't charge, which I think he should have done to try to clear an easy tank out of the game, because when you're trying to make a comeback, it's usually a numbers game. You want to have the least amount of enemies shooting at you as possible. So once again, we're back to shooting at the sides of the Motherland. I wasn't really tempted to try out heat shells here. We get 101 penetration on the heat shells, and the Motherland has 90 millimeters of side armor. So unless we're able to get a clean flat shot, it's going to have trouble penetrating. And although I am a little familiar with this 105 gun, I'm not that familiar. It's been a while since I used it, and I mostly just keep those heat shells for tier 6. No complaints about sticking with the HE shells here. I get some small damage hits, but managed to finish off the Motherland. Now let's check the post-game stats and see how I did. For this game, I earned 40,000 silver without any multipliers, remembering that I used 2 premium consumables with a tech tree tank, and I earned 3,201 experience. In this game, I dealt 2,416 damage, assisted with 2,514 damage, and destroyed 3 enemies while blocking 630 damage. Now just remember that I did get 800 damage at the start from that AFK T25/2. But even without that damage, I still would have been happy with this performance in a tier 8 battle. I placed at the top of my team, earning a base XP of 2,134. I managed to hit 19 of my 33 shots and penetrate 17 of those. In terms of crew and module damage, I destroyed the turret and injured the gunner in the T25/2, injured the commander in the IS, and damaged the viewport and injured the driver in the Tiger 1 hammer. So I'll now give a quick comparison between the two tanks and the two guns. The EZ8's more mobile, tactically flexible, and excels more at snapshots and supporting assault moves, making it more of a classic medium tank, and I would say better at working with platoons and around teammates. That Sherman Jumbo's got that nice armor to work with. It sacrifices a few medium tank capabilities, but it also makes it a very unique tank to use. You can fill in some more close combat roles, and be quite valuable by drawing some of the enemy's fire, while still maintaining your ability to survive. Between the 76mm and the 105, they're quite different guns, but fortunately both are very forgiving. The reload times aren't long for either of them. The 76mm gives a little more reliable damage per shot, while the 105 goes through high and lows, with the advantage of being able to splash even some of the most heavily armored tanks. But what it's going to come down to is just your own personal preferences. No matter which tank you pick, I recommend trying out both of these guns, because the selection really makes these tanks interesting. Well, like in TV, I hope this comparison will help you as you go into the EZ8 and Sherman Jumbo. I have a lot of fun with both of these tanks, and you can't go wrong either way, but hopefully this video will be useful in deciding which tank is best for you. I tried to be as thorough as possible, but there is a lot of information to go over with these tanks, so if I missed anything or you have any follow-up questions, feel free to ask. Stay tuned for more awesome World of Tanks videos.